they take it back to their own nest to feed their young. So 20 hornets can destroy a hive in 1 to 6 hours. In Japan, it takes on average 105 minutes to kill a hive. So it's really important for beekeepers as well as the public to be aware of this threat to our ecosystem as well as agriculture and sustainability in Washington, since Asian giant hornets are such a predator of our European honeybees. This doesn't always happen, but if it does happen in the fall. Where have we found Asian giant hornets so far? They've only been found in Whatcom County. They've been found in Blaine, Custer, Bellingham, and Birch Bay. The last Asian giant hornets that we have trapped alive have been in the Birch Bay area. Some of our surveys are being added to the Birch Bay area to help eradicate any additional nests. So how did we start our surveys? Based off that first Asian giant hornet find in Blaine, we created a grid. On the right hand, you'll see that grid. We take the location of the found Asian giant hornet and use that kind of as a radius to create an 8-kilometer circumference around it. And then we create smaller grids inside that based at 2 kilometers, 4 kilometers, and 8 kilometers to try and put many traps in that area so we can possibly catch an Asian giant hornet. In June, we had that Asian giant hornet found in Bellingham, which didn't fit in our original Blaine grid. So we created a new grid and deployed additional traps. As well as catching the Asian giant hornets in Birch Bay, you can see we created an additional grid there. But trapping isn't just the WSCA. There's tons of citizen scientists and cooperators that have begun to help us trap for Asian giant hornets, and it really has become a joint effort. If you're actively trapping for Asian giant hornets at home, thank you for your help. So what do we do once we find an Asian giant hornet? So our hope is to find a live Asian giant hornet, cool it down with some ice, and attached what you see in the top middle picture is a radio transmitter. So we actually glue that on a live Asian giant hornet. Once it wakes up, it naturally will fly back to its nest. We will use the bottom middle picture, which is actually attached to a phone, to help track through that radio transmitter to find it back to its nest. The picture on the far right is actually a heat-activated camera, a thermal imaging camera, so we're able to walk around and check spots in the ground to see if we can find any heat pockets where a nest might be. We do have strict safety procedures to help keep us safe when we're doing it, hence the spacesuit on the right. So unfortunately, we can't ask for your help in eradicating, but we do appreciate any efforts, tips, hints, calling in potential sightings. And that's it for what we're doing now. The next thing I'm going to talk about is some imposters. Some insects you might see that could look like Asian giant hornet, but definitely aren't. So the bumblebee. Bumblebees are our little furry friends. We want to keep them alive. They're a lot smaller than the Asian giant hornet, and they're fuzzy. The bald-faced hornet has kind of been common lately. There's some fall queens out who tend to be very large. The bald-faced hornet is kind of white or yellow, creamy in color. It is smaller than the Asian giant hornet. The best thing to do to tell an Asian giant hornet apart from any other native insect is the size of its head is just ginormous. It's about as wide as its body. Here's an Asian giant hornet and a great golden digger wasp. These do tend to put some scare into people as they also dig in the ground, just like Asian giant hornets nest in the ground. But you can see that their tail is orange with a black tip, and an Asian giant hornet is striped. Cicada killer wasps are more common in the spring, but you may still probably see them out. Again, look at the different sizing in the head, and then the striping on the abdomen is quite different. Horntail wood wasps. These are probably the most common imposter I get. If you look at the horntail on the left, there's a big, long tube sticking out of it. It looks kind of resembles a stinger. However, it's actually an egg-laying tube, and males and females both have this on them. They use it to lay eggs deep inside the wood. They're a very native and beneficial insect. Yellow jackets. They're a lot smaller. They're yellow and black. They do have the same resemblance as a wasp, like the thin waist, but they're quite smaller. The color is wrong. Cicadas, they're black and furry. They make the different noises. They're not an Asian giant hornet, but they are rather quite large, and sometimes the sound can kind of scare you. Just do your best to keep your awareness. Elm sawflies, these tend to be tannish colored, yellowish colored, white. They have kind of what you would see as it looks like an eye towards its middle, the black band surrounding it. American hornet moth, these are very cool. At least in my mind, they're very cool. The best way to tell them apart is by the wings. The wings of an Asian giant hornet tend to be translucent or kind of colored in the middle, while an Asian American hornet moth their wings are clear, definitely clear in the middle. They also are lacking the giant head that an Asian giant hornet has. Paper wasps, they are much smaller in size, and their antennas actually tend to curl in rather than be flat like an Asian giant hornet. If you think you've seen any insect that could possibly be an Asian giant hornet, the best thing to do is report it to the WSDA. When you report it, tell us any details you noticed. Definitely include the location, just the city, and if you're able to get a photo, send that with it as well. If it's dead laying on the side of the road, go ahead and collect it in case we need to see it. And when you're reporting, there's different ways you can do it. You can go online to our website at agr.wa.gov/hornets. The fastest way to get a response is via email. I check those constantly. You can send that to hornets@agr.wa.gov. If it's best way for you to call on the phone, give us a phone call on our hotline, 1-800-443-6684. If we don't answer the hotline right away, we will do our best to call you back in an appropriate amount of time. And if you kind of just want to connect with some people and see what's going on in the hornet world, we do have a Facebook group. You can go to facebook.com/groups/hornets and join that to connect with others. The last thing I'm going to leave you off with is some contacts. If you are news or you're any media inquiring on anything, you can email our public engagement specialist, Carla South. And if you just got some questions or want to chit-chat with me, you can email me at hornets@agr.wa.gov. I do have a more specific email, so I'll include that in my chat box. But that's all I'm going to talk at you for today. So I can answer any questions if there is any, or however you want to proceed.
Casey, this is Paul. The technology that you explained, that's pretty amazing. They don't have a chance. How new is some of those technologies that you explained?
So the radio tracking technology isn't actually all that new, but it's usually used on crawling insects, like it's been used on beetles, it's been used on snails. Beekeepers might use this thing called beelining, where they just kind of watch a bee fly, or they might attach a string to a bee to see which direction it's flying to track it back to its nest. We're going to be using those as well, but the best bet for us to find the location is through a radio transmitter. That's those types of tags we're going to be using. And we are actually working with Washington State University. They did help create and supply the tags for us to use. So we purchased it from them. So that was kind of cool to work locally to do so.
Other questions for Casey?
There's a question in chat too.
Mm-hmm.
So
I see.
Casey,
Hmm?
do you have any traps down in the Chuckanut area? We captured one last summer and we didn't know what it was.
Okay. I have to look at my map to see if they're in the Chuckanut area. The WSA is actively only trapping in Blaine, Bellingham, Birch Bay, Custer, that area. But that doesn't mean there isn't citizen scientists trapping in that area. I am deploying some other traps in the Snohomish and Skagit Valley this week, but there might be citizen scientists trapping in the area as well, as you're welcome to trap yourself.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think Kathy had a question.
Hi, I had just had a question. I'm a beekeeper and I put half-inch hardware cloth, the brittle hardware cloth. I just duct taped it on the front of my hives, and I've seen the bees are coming and going with no problem. The pollen in their baskets is not coming off for climbing over. And I wonder, is that going to be good enough?
So I can't exactly advise on this topic. I can link you up with Timothy Lawrence at WSU Extension, who's actually working right now to talk on it. The only thing that I can mention is you just want to be careful with any excluder, that it's not creating any blockage on the inside of your hive so the bees can't get out, so the bees are dying.
Right, I know that,
So
yeah.
I will go ahead and I will privately message you his contact information.
Thank you.
Where do the Asian Giant Hornets originate? How did they arrive here in Whatcom County? There's a that.
So Asian Giant Hornets come from Asia, typically Japan and Korea. We can't note exactly how they got over here, but the most logical guess would be some type of freight or some type of shipment coming over. There's been rumor about them possibly coming over in terracotta pots, with them being inside the dirt in them in the ground, but we honestly can't say, since the queens overwinter. They might have not been flying around actively, but the best guess would be freight. Or some type of shipment like coming over, but we can't exactly say that.
Hey, Kathy,
Oh.
one other question. Is Whatcom County the only lucky county in the country that has these critters?
Yes, they are only in Whatcom County.
How lucky can we get?
I don't know. Well, if we can find them all, we'll be real lucky, right? We won't have them. That's the goal.
But
So
Casey, they came from Canada or Victoria, BC?
So that Canada had their first sighting in 2019, as well as we did. Can't say if they were in Canada and came down from Canada, or if they just kind of came across a port or something. We had both sightings at the same time. They did have the first nest removal. We haven't found any nests removed yet. We've only had suspected and confirmed reported sightings. So they found a nest first. We haven't been there, but can't tell if that had happened before or after.
So my internet cut out for part of this, but my question was, so you might have addressed this, is the Canadian response as robust as what you are doing? I mean, it would seem that this should seem pretty like a collaborative response.
So I can't speak on behalf of Canada, of course. They are actively trapping. We do have conferences between us both to discuss any updates or any current efforts. They are trapping in the area, though.
Are there any natural predators that will feast on these hornets? Is there anything here that will help eradicate them in the natural world?
So as any insect, they are a hornet. So any insects that are interested in eating bugs would be a predator. However, since they are outside of their natural habitat, we can't for sure say what would prey upon them, what wouldn't. They're in a different ecosystem. There's lots of different factors that could come across the Asian giant hornets. If you happen to watch that YouTube video about the praying mantis, the WSDA did publish a blog in response to that, if that was something you might be thinking about.
Fabulous, fascinating program. Any last minute questions, gang? Well, I'd like to thank everyone for participating. Thanks to everybody that helped make this meeting possible. I look forward to seeing you all next week. Stay away from the hornets and stay away from the virus, and be good to one another.